Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm excited to start a new model kit project featuring American model cars. Our focus for this build is the Revell 1970 Plymouth Duster funny car. To begin, I've chosen a grey primer, specifically the Mr. Hobby 1500 primer. Following that, I will apply a layer of Tamiya Semi-Black X18. Once the base layers are set, I will move on to the Mr. Hobby GX202 Metallic Red. And to enhance the vibrancy of this shade, I will apply a coat of Tamiya Clear Red X27. The final touch will be the clear coat, which I've chosen to be GX112. So without further ado, let's get started and bring this model to life. A funny car is a specialized type of drag racing vehicle. These cars are known for their distinctive features such as tilt-up bodies made from fiberglass or carbon fiber, which are mounted on custom fabricated chassis. I didn't know much about these cars, but I was quite surprised to learn that they can reach speeds over 330 miles per hour. Now let's have a look at this vintage-inspired hot rod, featuring a new fire-themed decal sheet, a one-piece 70 Duster white body, rooftop emergency lights equipped with a loudspeaker, supercharged 426 Hemi engine with a soft rubber blower drive belt, and distinctive zoomy exhaust headers. This kit includes also tubular car frame, rear drag slicks with a unique wrinkle wall design. There are 100 parts to play with, a lot of them are chrome. As usual, I begin every project with car bodywork preparation. You can see that Revell has packaged several parts in one bag, including the cockpit shroud and two front tires. When it comes to the car body, it appears to be in good condition and isn't bent. Initially, it requires sanding with 3000 grit sanding sponge to help the primer adhere. Next, I mark the seam lines with a black Sharpie and sand them down with 600 grit sanding file. There aren't many seam lines to work on, but with this approach you won't miss any. Then, once this task is done, I deepen the panel lines with a scriber, since in this kit they are a bit shallow. However, I'm not so sure if this step was necessary, as funny cars don't have doors as such. After finishing these steps, I'm ready to apply the primer. For this project I chose Mr. Hobby 1500 grey primer, mixed with Mr. Hobby leveling thinner at a 1:1.5 ratio. This combination is sprayed using 0.3 Air Cobra airbrush set to the smallest spot size and 15 psi pressure. As the result of this combination, I get good coverage in a few coats. After priming the bodywork, the next step involves refining its surface. I usually start with 3000 grit sanding sponge, followed by a sequence of wet sanding using 4000, 6000 and 8000 grit sandpapers. However, in this project I began directly with wet sanding, as the initial surface was already quite smooth. In the next step, I covered the primed body with Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black. I chose this approach because the hood is black and this color also provides a suitable base for the metallic color I will be applying later. I begin to applying the black paint to the car body from the inside, since it is visible when the body is tilted up. The ratio and airbrush settings are more or less the same as those used for the primer. Couple layers more and we are done. The next step is masking. I wanted to replicate the same color scheme as shown in the artwork on the box, so I needed to cover the hood before applying the red color. For masking, I primarily used Tamiya masking tape in 1, 3 and 18mm widths. I softened the glue on the masking tape by pressing it onto my hand, so this helps reduce its adhesive strength on the surface, preventing any residue or paint peeling. So now it's time to apply Mr. Hobby Metallic Red color GX202 with a 1:4 ratio. I apply a few thin layers slowly, gradually building up the color until I achieve even coverage. add some depth, I cover it with Tamiya X27 Clear Red. You can see how the color changes with each new layer, giving it a sort of candy-like appearance. Then let's peel the masking tape off and apply a thin layer of clear coat to create a smooth base for the decals, allowing them to move more freely during application and stick better to the surface. Since I already have an open can of Mr. Hobby semi-gloss clear coat, I decided to go with that option. A couple of thin passes and it's done. Unfortunately, the semi-gloss clear coat makes the color a bit darker, but I still think it looks pretty good. Now it's time for the decals, which you can apply at least a day after the clear coat. I use Microset and Microsol to soften the decals, which makes it easier for them to conform to the shape of the surface. As for these long side decals, I was a bit worried, but surprisingly they went on really well, without any hiccups, and these flames on the hood look super cool. After all necessary decals are applied, I can move on to the adding another layer of clear coat. This step is essential to shield the decals from harmful UV rays. For the GX112 clear coat, I follow the practice of applying a thin coat, allowing each layer to dry for more than 5 minutes, and gradually increasing the thinning of the clear coat. I begin with 1:4 ratio and then switch to 1:6 ratio. With such a heavy thinning, it's relatively easy to accidentally overspray and observe the clear coat running. However, if this happens, you can always sand it down, so there is no need to worry. I'm not sure how to prevent unwanted particles from landing on the surface during clear coating, so the next step is to sand them down and make the surface smooth. This step involves polishing, which I typically do about a week later to ensure that the clear coat has fully cured. I begin with wet sanding, starting with 4000 grit, then moving to 6000 and finally finishing with 8000 grit sandpaper. Once the bodywork is uniformly sanded, I can apply fine and finish polishing compounds. It's crucial to do this step with care, as not paying close attention can sometimes result in going through the clear coat, paint and primer layers. If that happens, you may need to backtrack a few steps to fix it. That's why it's a good idea to apply some masking tape to the edges to make yourself more comfortable while polishing. Polishing is complete, and now I can mask the body to cover the bumpers and front grille with AK chrome paint. It's often mentioned that you can achieve a shinier chrome effect on a black glossy surface, so I thought I'd give it a try. AK477 chrome doesn't require thinning, so you can use it straight from the jar. I apply it with low pressure in thin layers, and I take a 10-minute break between each layer. This is the method I use to achieve the chrome look. I believe the final effect turned out quite well. Chrome is really delicate and even a small touch can make it less shiny, so it's best to avoid touching any chrome painted parts. I've seen a few chrome sealers on the market, but I haven't used any yet. If you have any experience with them, please feel free to share your feedback in the comment. I'm really curious what's your opinion on them. The car body is complete, so I can set it aside on my workbench and begin with working on the other parts. It's the usual process: cutting them off the spruce, sanding down the seam lines with 600 grit sandpaper, drilling holes in the zoomy side pipes, and then assembling the engine and clutch parts using Tamiya extra thin cement. Once parts are ready, I stick them to the holders using Patafix adhesive pads or homemade holders made from skewer sticks and crocodile clips, and then prime them all with Mr. Hobby 1500 grey primer. Primer helps with getting even coverage of the base color and makes the color sticks better to the surface. Once this step is completed, I move on to the painting the parts with various colors. I didn't choose too many colors. For example, there is metallic grey for the engine, cool white for the tube frame, semi-gloss black for the floor plate, AK477 for the side zoomy pipes, and red for the seat. The zoomy pipes are initially coated with black, as they will be later covered with chrome, while the other parts are painted directly in their respective colors. Now let's check out the other parts. Most of them come with a chrome finish, and instead of stripping them down, I simply used a brush to paint them. At first glance, these chrome parts might seem okay, but if you take a closer look, you will notice that some of them aren't top-notch quality. They can be a bit thick and lack details, so if you are looking to take your kit to the next level, you might want to think about stripping these parts, fixing any flaws and then applying chrome or a different type of paint for a better finish. In terms of painting, I used a black Tamiya paint marker for the coil spring and went with semi-gloss black for other details like the seatbelts. The steering wheel got a red coat while the emergency light received clear orange. And I used a Molotov chrome marker for the tongue buckle. Now let's have a look at the wheels. Right now you can see the chrome imperfections on the right rim, which could have been addressed with stripping down the original paint and replacing it with own painting job. Regarding the rubber tires, as they come in 4 separate parts, they need to be glued together. However, one of them is slightly smaller, so they don't fit perfectly and the seam line is quite noticeable on both pairs. The only way to address this issue is to carefully cut it off and then use a low grit file, I started with 40, to smooth it down. It may look a bit weathered as a side effect, but the seam line will still be visible. I didn't spend more time on it since I was happy enough with the final result. The model kit includes decals for side lettering and other elements that add extra touches such as the rocker covers or dashboard gauges. Of course you will need some essential tools for this step, including a sharp knife, a toothpick, cotton buds, tweezers and a bit of water for sure. If it comes to the panel lining technique, it entails applying a black accent color and then gently wiping it away using Tamiya X20 thinner. This method enhances the detailing in areas such as the engine, exhaust pipes or any other parts. With all the parts now finished, we are set for the final assembly. For all parts I will be using Super Gold plus CA glue, and this glue is also a choice for clear parts as it won't frost plastic. Okay, so I was following the instruction manual blindly and noticed that there are some mistakes in certain steps. Therefore, I recommend double checking the pictures and planning ahead to determine which parts should be assembled next to avoid ending up in a situation where you have to cover or rework parts that were glued together earlier. There were a couple of hiccups along the way. Some parts didn't quite fit and a few were missing holes. The chrome-plated parts needed some extra attention and there were a couple of head-scratching moments in the instruction manual. But for those who embrace the spirit of 70s funny car drag racing, they're likely to develop a fondness for this model kit. They will probably want to push the boundaries as funny cars do and take this kit to the next level. My approach for this kit was the same as for the Olds 442, keeping it simple. However, it seems that not every kit can deliver high quality right out of the box, and sometimes the responsibility falls on your shoulders. But that's all part of the modeling journey, right? Okay, thanks for watching and I hope I didn't put you all to sleep. If you find my content somehow valuable, feel free to leave a comment, like or subscribe. Catch you later, thanks a lot, cheers!